All right, let's get right into it. For the longest time, buying a piece of raw land was pretty much a sure thing. But what does that investment really look like as we head into 2026? Today, we're going to dig into a whole new reality for land buyers, all based on a really fascinating analysis from LandLimited.com that shows how climate and the economy are literally redrawing the map.
I mean, the dream itself is timeless, isn't it? Owning your own slice of the earth. It's always been about so much more than just an asset on a spreadsheet. It's about freedom, about building real equity, and, creating a legacy. It's this powerful, almost foundational idea in the world of investing. And here is where things get interesting. That foundational dream, well, it's starting to face some pretty huge new challenges. The actual ground beneath our feet is being reshaped by forces we haven't really had to deal with before. This isn't just about the usual market ups and downs anymore. We're talking about fundamental shifts. So how on earth do you navigate that?
Let's start with the biggest game changer of them all, the climate. This has gone from being some far-off abstract idea to a direct, measurable factor in what a piece of land is actually worth. It's like nature has introduced a whole new set of rules to the game that investors absolutely have to learn. First up, the one we all see on the news, especially if you look out west toward places like California or Colorado, wildfires. They're getting more frequent, way more intense, and they are having a huge impact on how much people want land in those areas and what they're willing to pay for it.
And this is where the risk turns into real dollars and cents. You're seeing property values actually drop in these high-risk zones. The cost to insure a property is just skyrocketing, if you can even get coverage at all. And for those properties in what's called the wildland-urban interface, where the suburbs kind of bleed into the wilderness, the financial pressure is just immense. Okay, so from the flames, we move to a threat that's a lot quieter, but believe me, it can be just as damaging. Drought. When you don't have water, it's not just a problem for farmers. It fundamentally changes what you can even do with a piece of land, which of course changes what it's worth. And you can see the chain reaction here. It's like a domino effect. Droughts drain the groundwater, which means you can't use the land for farming, or even for fun. That puts a ton of downward pressure on land values in those dry areas like the mountain states. As the source points out, sometimes water restrictions can literally take a valuable piece of land and make it useless.
The third major climate threat is a bit of a slow burn, but it is creeping closer every single year. For anyone with coastal land, say in Florida or Texas, the big question is no longer if rising seas are going to affect their property values, but when. And listen, these aren't some vague 100-year-out problems. We're looking at real, quantifiable risks. The analysis projects chronic, regular flooding in a lot of these areas by 2045. That means land literally washing away, soil getting ruined by saltwater, and billions, with a B, in potential lost value. If you're thinking of buying land as a long-term hold, this is stuff you absolutely need to know. But it's not just Mother Nature causing trouble. The economic climate is also putting a major squeeze on the land market. After that supercharged growth we saw for a few years, well, things are definitely changing. And here it is, the headline number from the analysis. After that post-pandemic boom, the national forecast for land value growth in 2026 has cooled way down to a pretty modest 0 to 3%. The market's not crashing, but it is stabilizing, and in some places, it's even getting a bit soft. So what's going on? Well, you can think of it like a big economic tug-of-war. On one side, you've got things pulling values down, high interest rates, low prices for crops, and just generally more cautious buyers. But on the other side, you still have forces propping things up. Land is still seen as a great hedge against inflation, there's not a lot of it for sale, and people are still moving out from the cities. It's a really complex balancing act. Okay, so we've laid out all the challenges. It might sound a little intimidating, right? But here's the good news. The analysis doesn't just stop there. It gives us a clear playbook for how buyers can actually navigate this new world. It's all about moving from that traditional mindset to a much more modern, risk-aware strategy. The playbook kicks off with 4 key defensive moves. First, and this is so important, do your homework on the climate data before you fall in love with a property. Second, don't just assume you'll have water. You have to confirm your legal water rights. Third, simple but vital, actively avoid those known high-risk zones. And finally, it's a mental shift. You've got to see raw land as a long-term hedge, not some get-rich-quick flip. So that's the defense. But what about the offense?
The real opportunity now is in proactively finding what the source calls resilient land. This is land that's basically set up to withstand both the environmental and the economic pressures we've been talking about.
So, what does this resilient land actually look like? Well, according to the analysis, it's often remote, inland, or in more northern spots. Think about areas with fewer regulations and less exposure to climate risks. The source even gives a great example: remote grasslands in Alaska that have almost no wildfire risk and zero property taxes. It's also about potential. Parcels that are great for recreation or for off-grid living are becoming way more attractive.
And of course, you can't forget the financial side. The source makes a fantastic point here. In a market where interest rates are high and banks are being cautious, flexible options can be a total game changer. Things like owner financing, where the seller basically acts as the bank, can be a really powerful tool to help buyers get into the market, even with all these economic headwinds.
So, what's the big takeaway here? As the whole landscape for raw land investing shifts, our definition of what a prime piece of property even is, well, that's changing too. It's becoming less about location in the old school sense and way more about durability, which leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. In this new, uncertain era, is resilience itself the most valuable asset you can possibly own?